February 18th, 2019. We'll open with silent prayer or meditation. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Mayor Berman?
Here.
Trustee Gavino?
Here.
Trustee Lowry?
Here.
Trustee Carroll?
Here.
Trustee Martinez?
Here.
And Trustee Gately?
Here. We have audience comments. We got 6 that are signed up. I don't know how you want to do this, whether you all want to speak individually or you have a spokesman or not, but I guess we'll call the way they're signed up. And the first is Nick Dalo, is that?
Yes.
Please come to the rostrum and state your name and address.
Nick Dalo. I live at 2065 Westover Road, in North Aurora, obviously. I was back here, I think it was August, late August, to talk about speeding down Westover. I just wanted to bring it up to attention again. I have some notes that I wrote out as the spring started. It's coming, and the cars and kids are going to be outside. I'd like to thank the village board for letting us speak today. Members of our Mirador community have been outspoken about speeding in our neighborhood, specifically down Westover Road. Karen Batcher has been here in 2014 to talk about the issue of speeding, and the complaints to the police department have been ongoing since. The village will say that they added 2 25-mile-an-hour streets last spring, and that police have written citations and tickets. That has not been enough to condition the people to drive the speed limit over the last 5 years. Numerous speed studies have been conducted and data has been collected. The police reports indicate that 95% of the people drive 30 miles an hour and under. The speed, do they have that report from Officer Fisher?
They don't have it, but I have the stats.
We'll be discussing that.
Okay. The speed limit is 25, it is not 30. If they want to justify 30 miles an hour, then make the speed limit 30 miles an hour. According to a study found on AAA's website, small children have a 10% chance of dying from a car that is traveling at 23 miles an hour, and it raises to 25% at 30 miles per hour, 50% at 42 miles an hour, which is seen, 40 miles an hour is seen on those speed studies. That is why it is imperative to enforce the 25-mile-an-hour law, not 30. In this instance, we'll use their 30-mile-an-hour statistics. According to their study, they saw 135,534 cars travel one way down Westover Road, going eastbound. We can assume that almost double that, adding the westbound travelers during that study. From all 3 studies, you can calculate that the average was 2,400 to 3,400 cars per day that travel down Westover Road, which is extremely high for a residential street. If they say that 5% of the 135,534 cars are doing 30 miles an hour or less, that would be 6,770 cars traveling over 30 miles per hour. According to the report, in the fall, they did 51 hours of detail. In those 51 hours, they wrote 39 warnings and 6 tickets. So they cited 45 people of the 6,777 cars for 0.66% of speeders. How can that affect the behavior of 2,400 to 3,400 cars per day down our street? That is not educating them. If they had ticketed the 6,700 people in a minimum of Illinois speeding price of $120 per ticket, the village could have collected a revenue of $813,000 in a few short months on our street alone. When I met with Officer Fisher, Stephen Bosco, and Officer DeLeo last week, they were very helpful and been extremely receptive. When they showed me comparisons to prove that speeding is not an issue on our street, they kept saying the comparison streets were narrower and have lots of cars parked on the street. Those are physical deterrents for speeders. That is what our street needs. Speed tables, raised sidewalks, and removal speed bumps during wintertime are all options that are proven to slow down speeders. The rebuttal is always that it slows down emergency response vehicles and that it is slow for snow, and it slows snow plows down. I spoke to 2 firefighters at house number 2 on Tanner, and they said they get 2,200 calls per year, and they rarely drive down Westover as their house exit onto Tanner. The next obstacle is snowplows. Speed bumps, speed humps, speed tables, raised crosswalks are found all over the Midwest and all over those communities. They figure out a way to do it. They have found a safe way to plow over them at the cost of slowing down speeders to help our community and be safe for children. I leave you with this. With the volume of cars and speeding down Westover, do you want to be the village board that is known for being reactive to a tragic situation, or proactive so that nearby communities will look to you for your innovative ways to make North Aurora residential neighborhoods attractive to prospective buyers? And if you feel this is still not an issue on Westover, I invite you to come out on the first nice spring day around 4:30 on a Friday afternoon. Bring your kids, bring your grandkids, have them bring their bikes. We'll have pizza, play bubbles, ride their bikes. And if you feel that they are safe while cars are traveling home on a Friday afternoon, then we will make this a non-issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Allison and Josh, you'd like to speak? Alyssa and Josh.
Good evening. I'm Josh Adler. I'm from 2088 Westover Road. My wife and I are both here this evening to speak about our concerns, just like Nick did, and what we see on a daily basis on Westover Road. As an educator and as a teacher, I'm forced every day to be someone's a forward thinker and to try to find ways to problem solve before things become a bigger issue. I've been on Westover Road for 6 years. Every day, I fear to let my kids go out and ride their bikes. I fear turning my lawnmower around out near the edge of the road because of cars, or plowing my driveway. Any number of things lead to issues for us as residents of Westover Road. In that time, I've seen individuals crash into parked landscape trucks 2 consecutive days in a row. I've physically been passed by cars going around me as I'm driving 25 miles an hour to try to keep them off my tail. It's become a big problem, and Nick said it very well. You have a great opportunity to try to make change in the residential areas. When you see the amount of volume that goes down that road on a daily basis, something has to change. Whether it be the addition of stop signs, whether it be finding other access points to help residents move around without having to cut through neighborhoods to try to find ways to get home quickly. There is a problem, and I really look forward to seeing what the village can do to help make it safer and more accessible for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Another is Martin Renta.
Alyssa
Man,
Adler
or-
again, I'm sorry. My husband just spoke.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The only thing that I would like to add is there are also 3 bus stops on Westover, one for the elementary school with approximately, this year, I believe, about 10 kids, a middle school stop on Bennett and Westover, and then also for the Canelan School District, there's an additional stop at Bennett and Westover. So, as parents, that's also a very scary time to see that many cars. So I'd like to make sure that that's also noted.
Very good, thank you. I'm sorry, is it Martin?
Yeah.
State your name and address, please.
I'm Martin Rudeman. I live at 2113 Westover Road. I've lived there for 12 years. I spent 15 years, I retired this last summer as a police officer. I spent some time in Chicago in the northwest suburbs. Over half that time I was an accident reconstructionist for the police departments. I can't tell you how many vehicle versus pedestrian crashes I've had to reconstruct that were fatalities. While I was doing one investigation, a second one happened where a 14-year-old girl was hit by a car. 2 girls were hit by a car. I was holding her scalp on her forehead. I could see her skull, and while she's screaming bloody murder. I really hope it never comes to something like that for any of you guys, because it's horrible, and I don't want this to be a reactive thing for my neighbors, their children, my children. There's so many kids in that neighborhood. So I echo what they said about finding a way to do it. There is a way to do it. Police department does what they can. I've spent 15 years, 3 in Chicago and 12 in the suburbs, so I know what it's like, suburban traffic. I put my car in the street just to slow people down. It works. So narrowing the street, somehow it will work, okay? Find a way to do it. Police department can only do so much running radar, and I know I 12 of these years I was in the suburbs running radar. I know how it can get. But I ask that you guys do it, no brakes. Stop, if it go 5 miles an hour limit, you give them a ticket at 6, okay? And you should, I mean, I know how silly that is, and I know how annoying that is going to court, but you guys can give us your officers' court dates, and I'll show up in court with them, and just to plead our cases as neighbors. And I've seen people, like you said, crash into parked cars. People just drive, while I'm sitting at a bus stop, someone in a minivan runs over a mailbox. That could have been my kid. And just see people reading Kindles as they drive down right past my driveway. It's insane. And I lose my mind when I see somebody doing this. So do what you can. We'd really appreciate it. And I don't want to look back 20 years and just regret living in North Aurora. I want to be proud of where I live and where I chose to buy my first home. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Joe Sundorf. Joe? 2057 Westover? Yes. All right.
I'm new to the neighborhood. I have no children, and I witnessed many cars speeding down Westover. I feel it's a thoroughfare from I can't think of the road.
Deer Path.
Deer Path, from Deer Path to Bennett. It's just a thoroughfare for Tanner Trails people to drive right through our neighborhood quickly. So it's a shortcut, and it's used as a speedy shortcut. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Jay Davis is the next sign.
I'm Jason Davis. I live at 2049 Westover. I've lived there since 2008. And Mr. Dalo provided data on the traffic in the neighborhood. And from an observational standpoint, when we moved on to Westover, there weren't a lot of homes, and Tanner wasn't fully developed. And I think that things have really changed. The Tanner population, the kids have gotten older. There's more drivers. Mirador has filled out. And I actually live right at the slight curve on Westover, and I'm smack in the middle. So that's typically where the cars are going the fastest. For us, we've actually had to make changes as the neighborhood got built out to where we don't allow anybody to play in our front yard, period. The only thing that we use our front yard for now is mowing. We installed a fence this past, we had one before, we installed another one this past year, purely for the purpose of keeping our child and our guests' children in our backyard for fear that they would go around to the front of the house. I do not have a background in law enforcement, but I know enough about cars that there is absolutely no way if a child went out in the street after a ball, whatever, that the people that drive down Westover would be able to stop. A couple of my neighbors have mentioned that you don't want to be reactive to the situation that we're facing. Good friend of mine, same scenario, moved into a neighborhood developed out, more people going to work, distracted, and they had a 4-year-old kid get killed on their street. So I have a lot of friends that live in Tanner, and it actually gets brought up when they come over to the house. We talk about the speeding on Westover, and they're good people. I mean, they say, that's terrible that people would drive that fast past your house. But as I'm outside doing yard work or whatever, I see some of my friends that live in Tanner driving on Westover well over speed. So I don't think it's something from community messaging that's going to get corrected. I think that something physically needs to be done to slow down the speeding on Westover. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jay. And Brian?
Thanks for having us, everybody. Brian Apgar, 970 Mirador Drive. Unlike my neighbor Nick here, I don't have the statistics or the information here as well organized as he does, but been a resident for 5.5 years, and bottom line is there is a problem. Whether statistically speaking it says that there isn't, having a radar cart at the entrance where people are slowing down or have been slowing down or are getting ready to speed up isn't going to actually show the true situation of people speeding in our neighborhood. Whether we are looking, we can have problems all day long. It's coming up with solutions to those problems, and if that's with Westover, Mirador, and Bartram, is having some sort of speed sign, some sort of solar panel light that actually clocks people, that actually reminds them, hey, you're speeding. I grew up in Naperville, and we had at 87th and Book Road neighbors that had gone to council meetings like this for years, pleading to be proactive to try to fix the situation because there was a lot of problems there. They wanted a stoplight. They put a stoplight in about 2 months after somebody was killed. So again, either proactive or reactive. Bottom line is when I was a kid in the 3rd grade on, we were able to go around our neighborhood for up to 2-3 miles on our bikes. There was no worry about people speeding. I don't know if it's just an evolution. My parents didn't care any less about me than I care about my kids. They wouldn't have let us go out and do the things we did if there was the kind of speeding that there is that's so prevalent in our neighborhood. So it wasn't a problem. I don't know what deterrents were fully in place. I don't know what the full solution is. But we live in the neighborhood. We're there every day. I don't let my kids go near the street because there's people that blast up and down the street. I mean, I am literally 35 feet from an intersection where there's a stop sign. You're either slowing down or you're speeding up, and people still find a way to clock 50 miles an hour. I don't have a ray gun, but I'm able to actually see that they're going faster than they need to be. So end of the day, we need to figure out how to put something in place. It's a people problem, but how are we going to put something in place that's going to remind people that they're doing something wrong, that's going to show them that there are consequences to doing this, and to get people to just simply slow down. So we need to feel safe in our neighborhood. I don't want my kids to have to get on their bikes, carry them through the backyard to go to the cul-de-sac where it's safer to ride around. I want them to be able to ride around on the sidewalks. I don't want to worry about if something happens, their brakes, they go out into the street accidentally and somebody who's going down too fast hits them. So let's find a way to come together as a community. Let's fix this. Let's make this neighborhood safer than it is. And let's just address the problem that we're here, whether the entire neighborhood is or not. It's not up to them, I guess. It's up to us. So help us make the change. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate all you being here. It's nice to have somebody in the audience. It seems to all of us when there's a single issue that it does happen. This is something that's been discussed and worked on by staff quite a bit. So before we have the trustees weigh in on any comments or anything, I think I would like to have our village administrator sort of present what they've gone through, what staff has gone through, and what we have talked about, and then we can have our trustees also speak. Steve?
I can surely go through a quick overview, and then I'll go to Deputy Chief Joe DeLeo. Chief David Fisher is unable to attend tonight, so Deputy Chief is in his place tonight. Joe, myself, and Dave did meet with Nick last week. We've had really good rapport in working with him the last few months. And so here's the basics. The basics are Nick came into a meeting, Mr. Dallow, back in August, I believe it was, and since that time, we had done a traffic study about 2 years before that. We did 2 updated traffic studies since then. The most recent one was a 52-day study over the course of October through most of November, in which we counted approximately 60,000 cars. That's in one direction, so that's how I think where Mr. Dallow extrapolated that. You can double that and assume that you're getting traffic
What
from
was that number, Steve?
around 60,000.
60,000.
Correct, over that 52-day period. And then so what I think you would do there is, just for argument's sake, you would double that number because that's only getting people from one direction. So assuming that puts it somewhere around 2,200 to 2,500 cars a day on average for that street. Westover is a collector street. It was designed to filter people from Deer Path into Mirador and the Tanner Trail subdivision. Mike was able to get it on our map up there, so it is the street that you see east-west. What makes Westover unique is it is currently the only collector street that is active between Deer Path into any of the western subdivisions of North Aurora. So it does collect a significant traffic volume. Once again, it was designed to take in a higher traffic volume than a normal side street, but still a significant number of cars a day. What we came up with is Mr. Dallow and I, we've gone through numbers. The numbers are what he presented tonight is accurate. In the study we did was 75% of all people in that 60,000 cars were doing 25 miles or under. So they were either at the speed limit or below. The remaining 25% was above 25 miles per hour. What makes it interesting and where the discretion came in, where the staff is almost all of the remaining people who are in the speeding category are between 26 and 30 miles per hour. So only 4 or 5% are going 30 or more, 31 or more, excuse me. So the issue then becomes is in that group where you're seeing a large number, 21% of all drivers in that 26 to 30 mile per hour category. Some of them can be doing 1 mile per hour over the speed limit. They could be doing 26. They could be doing 27. And it comes to a point where, yes, they're 1 or 2 miles over, but would a police officer discretionarily pull somebody over for going 1 over the speed limit? That's the question. So that being said, we do agree that there are a large number of cars on that road. Staff is looking into installing a solar panel speed sign. I believe the estimated cost of that is $4,000 to $6,000. We talked about doing that as an option to post there because we do believe that a reminder is a helpful way when people drive down the street to see their speed. That is an effective way of reminding someone to slow down. To Mr. Dallow's point, speed bumps, there's no doubt that speed bumps slow down traffic. No one's denying that that happens. I think there's some adversarial things that happen when you have speed bumps. And some of those things are noise complaints and actually shifting the traffic burden onto adjacent neighborhoods because people start to avoid that street and they go into side streets. These are all things that the police department and us have discussed. At this time, I would be more than happy to have Deputy Chief DeLeo go over the process, the call-outs that we've had, the police patrols that we've done since we've stepped up our game, so to speak, in the last 4 or 5 months. And then there's the long-term solution. And if there is something that the board wants to do, that's something we can address.
Thank you, Steve. I spoke with Brian back in August. We conducted an overtime detail where I have 60 hours of overtime. We discussed problem times from 6 in the morning till 9 in the morning. We did 37 hours of overtime patrol, then also 23 hours of overtime patrol between the hours of 3 o'clock p.m. and 6 o'clock p.m. We went over the numbers. It was more of a messaging. We weren't trying to cite everybody simply because they're all residents of the areas. Brian has continued to work with Officer Pete, who is their PACT officer and also traffic officer. We are still conducting periodic speed details. We can't be there 24 hours a day. But we're looking for comparable streets to Westover, and the closest we can find was Pine Creek.
That's the one I was...
It's pretty
Creek.
wide, pretty much a straightaway. In comparison, for about a month detail, they had 19,000 cars that went through as compared to 60,000 cars on Westover. So we were discussing it, and we think it's because Westover is used to get to Tanner Trails, Mirador, and all the other subdivisions that are connected. We just discussed the best option maybe to get the solar panel signs. If you ever driven down Pine Creek and you look up, you see the sign, even if you're going 2 miles over the speed limit, it catches your eye and you try and slow down so it's not flashing in your face. We are open, of course, to working with everybody. They've been very approachable and cordial. We're really going at this as a team. We're willing to do whatever you guys need, more details. We will always be out there taking phone calls and emails. We're open to anything.
I got a comment. So I remember that speed indicators call that we got on Pine Creek. We got that through a grant through the county. It was a weed and seed program. It was probably back in 2003. How did it work? I mean, is it slowing people down? They see that indicator?
You know what? I don't get any emails from that subdivision as I do with Westover.
So then, in your opinion, that speed indicator did its job, it slowed people down?
If you're asking my professional opinion, yes. It has an effect on me as I drive through.
So I like that idea of having speed indicators on that road. What was the other road? Hang on a second, I'm not done. Was there other roads where they're speeding or just Westover?
No, just Westover.
Just Westover?
Yes.
Okay.
And Bartram as well, sorry.
Bartram Road?
Bartram and Mirador. Mirador feeds into Westover from Bartram, which comes from Tanner.
And Bennett's just as bad as Westover as well, because they go down Westover and go down Bennett.
Bartram's just east and north, and then Mirador connects.
So Mirador, so there's like three throughway streets where there's just a lot of speeding, right? Is that what I'm hearing here somewhere?
We're only approached about Westover for the main
Okay.
issue.
I think we're on the right track with the speed indicators. I mean, at least that's a way of, I think it does detour people. They see it, they stop, and well, I'm speeding. And if they're going one over, they'll know if you're going one or two over. And there used to
We're
be like,
discussing speed bumps. When we see it on Lynn Court, cars will actually go around the speed bumps to keep their speed. So it's not a panacea for the speeding.
so where would the speed indicators go? Would they go in the middle or at the entry, or which way do you think? Hang on a second. Let me ask
I
you.
think we're going to need two.
Okay.
One for east, one for west.
Okay.
On Pine Creek, we only have two. One is on the south side of Butterfield going in the south direction, and the other one, I believe, is going on the north direction in the Pine Creek subdivision north of Butterfield.
You know, we've discussed this at staff meetings. I know the board hasn't had an opportunity to hear all the things that, all the statistics that were presented tonight, but we've discussed it in staff meeting. We've talked about all different kinds of things. I think the first thing I think that we could would be to put up the radar to, and I think that we could evaluate that. And I'll tell you, the next thing we could do after that is put up a camera. And for every person that goes over 25, we take a picture and we arrest them and fine them. And we'll see if that doesn't slow traffic down. But I think that's much better than a speed bump, and it's much better than anything else. The people that are violating this are the people in your neighborhood, your neighbors and everything else that are going through, not necessarily in your street necessarily, but to the west. But they are concerned about speed on their streets just the same as you are concerned about speeding on your street. So I think we should go with the radar. And I think if that doesn't work, then I don't see any reason why we shouldn't put up a camera and take pictures and arrest everybody that speeds over that one.
So you mean the speed indicators where it indicates their speed?
I think that's the first thing we need to do.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with the first thing. I don't agree with cameras, because if we
I don't
install
either,
cameras
normally.
anywhere in North Aurora, we're going to have 3 times the amount of people in here complaining about speed cameras.
All right.
But I do agree with the solar speed indicators. The other question I have, Mike, are you the one doing the map? Can you raise that map a little? Is there any plan to extend, when this property just south of Westover is developed, is there any, what is it? Is that Bauer? Is that going to extend over to Deer Path?
Yes.
Yeah, correct. You would have
That
Stratford
should-
and Bauer.
That should alleviate some of that traffic eventually.
Well, it's sort of like the speed bumps. It transfers your traffic to a different street.
Well, right, but right now, that's the only entrance off of Deer Path for that entire area. And, I mean, you've got people going up north to Mirador, you got people going all the way out to Ellaby and Leonard Lane, and you've got people going into Tanner. So I think eventually that will help a great deal, having a second entrance into that subdivision, because you'll catch all that southern Tanner Trails traffic, will alleviate a lot of that. but I think we need to be aware of the same problem when we do that
Yeah.
speeding's gonna be a problem there.
My suggestion would be that if the board would like us to go the route of it sounds like that's the route that the board would like us to go, is to put up the speed indicator signs that show you what your speed is when you're driving. And that would be a good way then for Joe to take the data and look to see afterwards if there was a, better response. And the truth is like, and we went through this several times. So we didn't hear from the HOA, and I did ask, like, I would like to speak to their HOA at one point, because what we also find out too is the HOA represents that whole neighborhood. We'd like to know the HOA board's opinion, since they're representing all their neighbors. I'd like to hear from them on some of the thoughts and concerns that they've gotten from other residents too. But in my opinion, one of the things that we could look at doing is, if the speed indicator signs down the road don't seem to be working, then I would suggest hiring a traffic engineer to actually look at the neighborhood and potentially make recommendations.
I like the solar idea as well, but I personally wouldn't be opposed of zero tolerance on tickets. Do some kind of speed campaign to where, hey, you know what, we're starting this, it's going to, and get it out there that, we're not going to tolerate it. And I'm not sure how the courts view a 1 mile over, Joe. Would that
Not
throw it out?
go really well for our reputation. no.
Yeah. I don't know.
Being a police officer, yeah.
That's a nuisance.
What was that?
That's an idea. I was thinking the same thing about dropping the speed limit.
No.
Perhaps. I don't know what
If,
impact that
I
would
don't
have.
Unfortunately, it's like all of us, I live out there as well, and we all probably need to look in the mirror, because we all probably step on the gas somewhere. And, it's a neighborhood problem. I mean, people aren't cutting through. I wouldn't think we'd have too many people from Tanner Road cutting down Bennett. Maybe they are, to get over to Deer Path, but, I live on a kind of a busy street as well, and it's the same way. I know we did a traffic study once on, I think it was Juniper.
Correct.
First person they caught was the lady that came in and complained. So, I mean, it's a lot of it's just all of us. We do need to slow down and pay attention and, respect neighborhoods as well. But, I don't know if we have the answer, but I certainly appreciate everybody's comments and coming in and, trying to get something done. 'Cause
I got another question, Joe.
I'm not,
Oh, sorry.
but, we all want to feel safe in our neighborhood, and it is a concern, and like I said, I don't know if we have the answer, but I know this board and staff is, interested in trying to come up with some kind of solution. So it might be a work in progress, like they're saying, start with one item and move ahead, but, get the word out there, maybe through the HOAs that, it's not going to be tolerated on these roads. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Are we getting a lot of people on their phones, like driving around, or is that a problem?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
And in April, we received a $7,500 grant for Distracted Driving Month.
Oh, okay.
Just driving around in unmarked squad car, I haven't seen any change from prior to, it's ridiculous, it's nonstop.
If you allow me to say a word, there's people here 100% correct on their concern, and correct me if I'm wrong. Have I not brought it up to you before as far as the speeding in those streets? I live in Imgren. I pass that street at least 4 times a day, and my kids are 12 years old. And you're right. They do very little playing in the front yard because it's always a concern to me. And every other neighbor that we have, there's a lot of young kids that are starting to become of age, and you see the cars just speeding pretty fast. And if I'm not wrong, we had in Westover already mile markers that hold very little impact. I mean, I've seen it. I go through them. And, knowing your speed doesn't deter you from speeding. So I've been called an A, as far as, it's gone as far as, people calling names because you're driving slow, trying to hold the person behind you from passing you, and they pass you, okay? So, people get pretty heated when you're trying to hold 20, 25 miles an hour for the sake of kids there, and all of a sudden they pass you because you're holding them back. To me, I think that an officer on site, if it was possible, would pay for itself just in the number of tickets. When you add it all up. At the end of the day, if it comes down to speed bumps, and I'm not just talking about Westover, I mean, Imgren, there's a lot of different corners that, especially in the winter, when kids want to go and play in the snow, they build those banks and they start sliding down. My concern is not just the kids, but, perhaps even pets that are, being walked and anything, it's pretty concerning, because I'd rather take a $6,000 bill for a speed bump or something like that than take a funeral invitation, or having to go through an answer for that. So, you conducted a study. You already know your traffic is out of extraordinary. It's not your regular traffic. With our kids growing up, you're going to have more drivers, and they're young drivers, So they're more daring. They know it all, right? They can drive. I would hate to see somebody hurt, because it's not only going to be somebody. It's somebody in my neighborhood. It's somebody that is close to me, and it is my responsibility as a board member to go through and not just listen to their concerns, but act on them. So I'm not trying to be partisan, because I live there. I just know the issue that this has been evolving for so long. So I think that those mile markers have been installed there. I seen them, and I seen people pass right on the corner of Deer Path and Westover Road. That's where the marker used to be. So I don't think at this point those markers have had enough of an impact on our drivers. And, I guess I will continue to be an A, for trying to hold my speed down and, try to keep our people under control if that's what it comes down to. But there's a lot of vehicles that are parked on the streets, which I purposely see them as deterrents from speeding, and people will still try to speed up to pass that guy that is obstructed from coming through. So I just want to say I'm fully supportive, not because I live there, but because I see the potential danger, and I don't want to be responsible in any way to see somebody hurt, even if it's just a pet. I would hate to see that.
All right, that's good. I think you sort of summed up everybody's feelings for it. It's not because we live there or don't live there. We're all interested in the same thing. I don't think that's a question. I think what we'll have is our staff will certainly evaluate it more and come back to either discussion of a committee meeting and a COW meeting, and come up with a recommendation that can come before the board that we can make a decision on. So that's the way we normally work, and that's the way we'll continue to work. So I thank you all for being here. Appreciate it. You can come back any other Monday night that we have meetings. They're awful exciting. Sometimes they last all of 5 minutes. So thank you. All right. Any other comments from trustees?
No.
All right. Good enough. Trustee comments. Consent agenda.
Before, I would just like to make a comment about, not about the last thing, but just from my perspective, about the events that went on Friday, I'd like to extend condolences out to the family members and the people that were victims of the tragedy in Aurora. I would like to commend our police and fire department that participated with the village, or with the city of Aurora, and thank you for your service. Joe, I understand you were there. I know my next door neighbor in Tanner Trails was there as a fireman, and our hearts go out, and we thank you for your service.
Thank you, sir.
Job well done.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Consent agenda.
So moved. Motion approved.
Second.
Discussion? Clerk, call the roll, please.
Yes.
Trustee Lowry?
Yes.
Trustee Carroll?
Yes.
Trustee Martinez?
Yes.
Trustee Gately?
Yes.
Under new business, item number 1, Mr. Laskowski.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is a is the Public Works Department seeking approval for the purchase of a 2019 Ford F-250 from Landmark Ford in Springfield, Illinois, in the amount of $34,472. This proposed purchase is going to be on the state bid process again. As I've talked about in the past, the state bid purchase allows us to purchase on a joint contract that the state of Illinois already had. So the state performed a letting, got the best price, and now they're allowing us to piggyback on it. In addition to that, we always go one step further and take that quote to the local dealerships and see if they can provide us with an even lower cost. This time we took that quote over to what used to be Fox Valley Ford, Gerald Ford. They were unable to provide a lower quote this time, so we're proposing that if we do purchase the vehicle, we choose to go with the state purchase. We also looked at used vehicles. We looked on Auto Trader and found that for the same amount of money we're purchasing a new vehicle, we found vehicles that were comparable would have like 60,000 and 90,000 miles on them. So we're thinking we're getting a pretty good deal. Some of our concerns with the used vehicles, as always, are they either come with extra options that are unnecessary for our operation, or they aren't beefed up enough to support what we're using the vehicle for. And that's especially true in this case. This vehicle is going to be a daily use vehicle for the water division. The advantages that we see in this vehicle as opposed to the past is we're requesting a body modification that will include compartments. Those compartments will be able to take the equipment that the water department currently carries in the bed of the truck and take it out of the elements, organize it, and keep it protected essentially and secure. The truck, again, is daily use. The purpose of it is to take samples from watering when needed, attend appointments for residents to either do meter installs, sometimes water shutoffs. They carry equipment to do valve exercising and fire hydrant painting as well, and when necessary, the equipment for water main breaks. One of the changes we did propose on this truck to reduce the cost a little bit is we realized that a 4x4 wouldn't be necessary on this vehicle. We're not going to be using it to plow, and we're going to try to extend the life of the vehicle for that reason. It's going to be a 4x2. We think that the weight of the vehicle is going to be able to accommodate all the operations that we need it to. And we do have 1-ton trucks that are specifically equipped to do the plowing. The plowing that this truck would do would only be around the water treatment plants anyway, so we feel that it's an unnecessary option for us at this time. We're expecting to take the old vehicle out for auction. In the past, we've had good success because we do maintain our vehicles very well. And the auctions have, in the last 2 vehicles, come back with better prices than we had expected. This vehicle, based on a trade-in value, is looking at $8,500 to $10,000, and that's kind of what we're expecting to get, if not better, at the auctions. So it's the Public Works Department's request to ask for approval for the purchase of this vehicle in the amount of $34,472.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion?
Is there anything wrong with this one currently?
I'm not real familiar with the service record. The last repair I saw was this year had a $500 brake job on it.
Could it be
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Oh, good.
Could it be possibly kept in addition to the new one if it's approved as a secondary or backup vehicle?
We could keep it as a secondary vehicle. I think at this time, I'm not sure that, I think sending it to auction may be better in this instance because I don't know, we would have 2 relatively new vehicles in the fleet for the water division operators, and they would both have the modified bodies at this time. So it could potentially be used as maybe a watering truck we could get rid of the old watering truck and retrofit this one for that purpose. But I think we had planned on that modification in the future with a different vehicle.
It's a F-150, right?
This is it's a Chevy Silverado 2500.
Oh, it's a
three-quarter ton.
Okay.
My only concern is it's low miles, 65,000, and you just drive around in the town with it, and you don't plow with it. It's just,
That vehicle, we did do some limited plowing. It does have the attachment.
You're right, no, I understand that, but being that the next one doesn't have a plow, evidently it's not really in the mix and not really needed. I just, I don't know. If there's no issues with it, it's kind of a shame to get rid of it and spend $34,000 for another one, so.
Correct me if I'm wrong, John, but do we store this vehicle outside at all?
This vehicle, it depends. If there's operations in the treatment plant that are creating an issue, it's outside. A lot of times it's not the best for the vehicle to be stored inside the treatment plants because of the amount of humidity that breaks up. So we give it a rest in and out.
That's part of the issue with the next item on the agenda is the water department doesn't really have a home. So some of the trucks do get parked outside. I talked to Water Superintendent Paul Young. One of the advantages of this trucks is also that they can carry meters and MIUs to their appointments in this truck in a utility bed that's covered where the meters and MIUs are out of the elements. And this way, when they go to an appointment, if they go there and find out that they need to replace a meter and MIU, they don't have to go all the way back to the shop to get another one and make another appointment to go back to the house. They can keep it on site and have it readily available. It's mostly about the fact that they just want a more efficient truck at this point. This truck was paid for. Basically what we do is we have a replacement program for trucks. Pickup trucks are typically built out to around 10 years. This truck is 13 years old. It was paid for by the water fund. The next truck will probably be kept for 12 to 15 years on average. I'm just using it as a round number. So the money was put aside a few years ago for this truck in full. So when you talk about it being paid for, it isn't like it's necessarily a hit right to our operations budget. This money was literally put aside years ago for this next truck.
I was just wondering if it could be perhaps rotated like we do with the squats, a lot of the times where it's still a decent vehicle. Perhaps it could be another use for a different department or a different code enforcement or something along that line. I'm not objecting in any way to getting a more efficient vehicle, but if it's a good vehicle, then maybe it could be used for a different purpose. Even as a backup, I'm not sure. I was just suggesting.
Bill's not here tonight, but one of the questions that in this discussion that just occurred to me is because this was paid for by the water fund, which is an enterprise fund, I'm not sure if the proceeds from the auction can be used for our vehicle and equipment fund. I'd have to double check that. I'm pretty sure they can be. Or if they has to go back into the water fund because you operate that fund like a business. So that was one question. But then again, you can transfer money from the water fund to pay for a truck. So I'm sure it's fine. One of the reasons I bring that up is the resale value of the truck is good now. So the longer we hold on to it, the less money we get back for it. So that's another concern. At the end of the day, I get it. We talk about this internally all the time. We don't want to be the village that turns trucks in and everyone says, wow, they have nice shiny trucks. But we also don't want to be the village that looks like our trucks are starting to fall behind to the point where people think we're not managing our equipment properly.
Well, and I don't think it makes sense, like for code enforcement or other, to be driving a 3/4 pickup, it's.
Yeah, I was just mentioning like
right.
other department perhaps.
Yeah, I agree, but I don't know. So as far as meters, you can throw them in the back seat. You think it's got an extra thing there. I like to be good stewards of our money. And, when I look at something like this, I just think that, it could be used longer. And as far as what the value has when we get rid of it, it's kind of, to me, I don't look at it that way, I guess. I look at it, maybe that money could be used somewhere else. I don't know if it can be, but just 65,000 miles, it's just, but I'm always going that direction, but that's where I'm at. So.
Is the truck breaking down now, other than you said it brakes
put
were
$500
replaced,
brake job on it.
But that's not breaking down. Is it breaking?
Other than preventive maintenance, I'm not aware of any other incidents where it broke down.
I know everybody goes by the 13-year-old or 15-year-old and it's time to rotate, but it's just,
Yeah, I think it's a standard replacement program that, obviously one that we've been adhering to for years. So. Any other?
But I think a lot of it's based on the truck, and this one here is really used lightly. It's just a drive-around truck. It's not hitting the streets plowing, or it's not, something that's really gets worked over, and so. I like to see it, if nothing else, kept for, like I said, the guy that drives that other one around the water truck. It's a shame. Pretty soon we'll come back for something new there. And this one, you can slide that tank in the back and at least keep it, and at least it seems like we're still using it versus.
I think that's a good idea.
You know.
I think that's the best idea. With that if low mileage,
Yeah, and we know the history of it. And
Yeah.
it doesn't have an issue. If it had a trans problem or some major issue, I'd say, yeah, get rid of it. But I'd hate to just,
if it fit in my garage, I'd take it, but
If,
I got 3 vehicles now.
sorry, go ahead. I was
Any
going to
other
say, if the
discussion?
village board
No,
had, okay.
I'm not opposed, like I said, new one, but I'd like to certainly keep this one around if we can. But
Yeah, here's what I'll tell you. Should we go forward with this purchase, then what I'll do tomorrow is with John and Brian and Bill and Paul, it'll be a group effort. I'll make sure, we'll take a look at the water truck. If we can repurpose that truck and that's not an issue, I don't have a problem with that. If for some reason that becomes an issue, we can hold off the purchase for another meeting, bring it back and let you know before you make a decision at
I
that
think
point. It's fine.
if we can utilize it, fine.
right.
Will the clerk call the roll, please?
Trustee Gately?
Yes.
Trustee Martinez?
Yes.
Trustee Carroll?
Yes.
Trustee Lowry?
Yes.
And Trustee Gafino?
Yes.
Oh, item number 2, John.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is the selection of a firm to perform a consulting analysis of our public works facility. Basically, what the staff was looking at is a variety of firms to perform a space needs analysis. And what that is basically a firm coming in, taking a look at our building, interviewing our employees, and trying to get an idea of if we have an adequate space, if there's a way that we can modify that space to become more efficient within what we already have, if an addition may make sense, or if a new building is something that could be recommended. Now, when we put this proposal out, we put it out as a proposal because we wanted to use the qualifications-based selection process, meaning we don't have to go with the firm that provides us the lowest bid. Rather, we can evaluate the proposals and then evaluate the firm's qualifications as well. So we're looking at architects and engineers and the cost as kind of a combined effort as opposed to a road program where we're just going with the contractor who provides us with the lowest cost. So as we went through this process, we received 9 proposals. We went through the first few criteria that we established in the document, which were kind of looking at the experience of each firm, the creativity, and then the team qualifications of each firm. And based on that, we were able to narrow that list of 9 down to 4 qualified firms. And then from there, it took a little bit more thought and effort. As a group, we checked the references that each of those firms provided us, evaluated the cost to make sure that it was reasonable within budget and kind of in line with other professional services that would be performed along this magnitude. And then also we conducted an interview with these 4 firms. After conducting that interview and evaluating those other 2 criteria, it was the staff recommendation that Legat provided us with the best proposal. They stood out because they provided a very collaborative process in which they would evaluate our needs. So they had proposed that they would interview all the staff members, they would, and potentially other stakeholders that had interest as well. They would perform a tabletop meeting in which they would provide basically a diorama of our facility and allow it to have some interactive qualities where we could shift various components of our facility to and from to get an idea of how our operation could be improved. So that could be an example would be, you know, if we took our fueling station, which is currently at the far end of our yard right now, and brought it closer to the building, does that make sense? Or if we moved our salt barn in a more, in a different location, would it make dumping and loading salt a more efficient operation? And this was one of those things that we felt that this firm brought to the table that some of the others didn't. We felt they were a little bit more creative. The team that they had experience. They performed this study before for the town of Lisle. And when I contacted their public works director, he was satisfied with the results of the study that was provided. So it is the staff recommendation then at this time to award the contract to Legat Architects to conduct the Public Works Space Needs Analysis in the amount of $24,925.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion?
I was just curious on the one that number, Wold. Did they miss out or miss some items, or why the discrepancy there, the wide gap? Was there any?
I think their scope was pared down a little bit from what we were requesting. It was a possibility that they could have added items to then meet our scope requirements. One of the drawbacks from Wold is I don't think we felt the engineer that they brought on board necessarily had the qualifications that we were looking for. And the architectural firm itself, they had done work for us in the past, and they weren't necessarily directly responsible for, but indirectly oversaw some of the improvements at the police department that have kind of created some more maintenance concerns for us.
I'm not sure their cost, and I could be wrong, John, but the cost of the engineer, I don't think that was figured into the 9,500 off the top of my head, but I'm not sure on that.
Is it figured in with any of them? Because I thought I read somewhere 5,000 to 7,000 additional.
5,000 to 7,000 is for the one that we're recommending. That is, if we want, it could be, this study could be an additional 5,000 to 7,000. Legat is saying that they don't think they need an engineer to do this. They have the capability of turn radiuses. The only reason that these firms that we talked to were bringing in civil engineers was they were concerned that the design could trigger a stormwater review. But here's the thing, this design is phase one of ultimately what would be potentially 3 phases. Phase one is just determining your existing space, how you utilize it, and if it can be utilized better. If it can, great. If it can't, you know, I'm sorry, I should have said that 2 ways. So they're looking at the space and how to utilize it better. Either way, they're also going to look at the space needs and like, do you actually have enough space to store your equipment and the staff? As I said earlier, we currently don't have any of our water personnel actually stationed at Public Works, though they belong to that department, because we don't have space for them. John and Brian share an office together in Public Works. We're talking about potentially moving some other staff out there in the future, but we don't have anywhere to put them. So this is a study to take a look at the space, and then we've asked for potentially 3 recommendations. Redevelopment, so taking the existing building and possibly renovating it. Additions, if that's an option, do we need an addition? If so, what would that look like? And then new building. And I can tell you right now, the staff's not pushing for any one topic. We'd be happy with just a study that says, yes, you need X amount of space and here's how we can configure it. That's the first step. Second step is, after you look at that diagram, we bring it back to the village board and let you know exactly what the architect is supporting. Then potentially the next step, if the board wants to move forward with a full-blown architectural study, what you would do is you would take that existing site design and you go the next step when you to actually draw the architectural renderings of the improvements that they're recommending, which is more expensive. And then that gives you the total price for all your improvements. They can give you some rough costs in the first phase, but the second phase, when they design it, that's when they're actually looking at things like HVAC and, you know, if we do this, how much would it be to, you know, put pavement down, that kind of thing. And then that would give the board the final number to decide whether or not to actually do the improvements or not.
So will they be bringing an engineer in? I guess that's my question. It says 5 to 7 more, so we're at 31,000. So is that, we don't know, it's up to them or up to who or what's?
As of right now, they're saying that they don't need to bring the engineer and they don't think they need to. If we would like them to bring the engineer, they work with a reputable firm that we're comfortable with. So yes, there is a potential that it could be 5 to 7, and if so, I would probably have to approve that as a change order. But as of right now, we're not anticipating that that has to happen.
But none of the top 4 include engineering, correct?
No, I don't believe that's true. I believe Kluber actually includes an engineer.
In the 21,000?
Correct. And Prairie Forge did not, to my knowledge. And off the top of my head, Wold has 9,500. They have an engineering firm, but once again, without the proposal in front of me, I don't think they had the cost of the civil engineer in there, but I'm not sure.
They had part of it.
Part of it?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
There's $25,000 in the budget. We should have probably mentioned that too. Sorry.
Any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll, please.
Trustee Gately?
Yes.
Trustee Martinez?
Yes.
Trustee Carroll?
Yes.
Trustee Lowry?
Yes.
Trustee Gafino?
Yes.
I have no old business. Village President report. Trustee Carroll covered the feelings of all of us, I think, towards what happened in Aurora and our sympathies for the family of the victims. And I've already expressed my feelings to our police department, but I must say that we're very proud of the 11 officers that were involved. And what it really proves is all the effort and all the training and all the practice they've gone through shows up in something of this nature. So we're really proud of you. So thank you very much. Any committee reports? Trustee comments? Mr. Administrator?
No report tonight, thank you.
Mr. Attorney?
No report.
You never have anything to say. Why is it?
It's all behind the scenes.
Village Department's Finance, Bill is not here. Community Development, Mr. Toth?
No report.
Police, Joe?
No report.
Public Works, John?
I'd just like to compliment my Public Works employees today. Yesterday, they were out for 12 hours snow plowing. It was 8 in the morning. They went from 7 in the morning till about 1, and then came back at 5 till 1 in the morning and really hit it hard. They did an immaculate job in comparison to where I'm coming from with the street maintenance of the streets. And on top of that, 4 trucks went down yesterday during the snow event, and they worked hard today, got 2 of them back online, and are working on getting a third up today, tonight actually, as we're talking. So they put in a good effort. One of our fine citizens actually brought in donuts for them, so they were happy this morning.
Thank you, John. You know, it's gotten so we expect that kind of, and we take it for granted. But it's really great that you bring it up, and we're all proud of our of our workers and how they have approached their jobs. And
Thank you, guys.
Thanks again.
If I may for 1 second, I should also let the board know that Bill's not here, so I don't know if he was going to bring it up tonight, but our expense for plowing is going up dramatically this year from last year. So we budget roughly $160,000 for contract plowing. We're already approaching that number. As you know, we also have a certain purchase of salt from our contractor through the state purchase. John, Brian, and I had talked, and it looks like we're getting close to, if not already at our 100% number of our request, and we'll be requesting our 20% overage. Starting to even look at prices in case we have to go beyond that 20%, and it's not looking pretty. But this year has been brutal because of the durations of the snow that we've had in January. It's not these snowstorms that are bad. It's the fact that they're lasting 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours. So it's been interesting.
Well, the groundhog saw a shadow, so we should be good, right?
Good.
And that's the middle of March. Well, I think it's been probably the worst January that I can recall here, that I've been there.
I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Cow meeting will start shortly.